Anyways, you see that they're starting to get more symbolic than just a few lines. They're really putting a little more effort into what they're doing. I don't understand all of it, but it certainly is meaning something. So 65,000 years ago, in Kenya, we get more beads and red ochre modified. 60,000 years ago, South Africa, we start to get different patterns of designs. Probably different clans, could be. Or it could be individual artists are doing it different. But they seem to be a similar type for a more use. And these are actually probably done on water containers, because they would take the whole ostrich egg, put water and bury it in the ground. Make a little hole in it and then fill it up with water so they can come and get it later, store water. And so they would put the marks on it, because this is our egg, our clan's egg, probably. But I think this also is getting close to the totemistic clan mentality. Us and them. So 50,000 years ago, you have totemism, and totemism gets a little more advanced than the animistic spirit world before them. And you can see even the animals, to me, get a little more aggressive. The human's importance gets a little bit less, and the animals a little bit bigger, but they're, in a sense, not as tame in a sense as the animists see the world. It starts to be a little more like same us and them, but us and the animals. Although they do, totemists do see the possibility for a human to have an ancestor that is a plant, or an ancestor that is an animal, as a direct ancestor. They think we now know that's nonsense, but I mean, they thought in this, or think that in a sense you can have genetically or some kind of a deep connection to you. And I think that's where you get the astrology, because they're already thinking up there means ancestors. And you already have totemists that think that animals can be our ancestors or relate to us. And so it's not that hard to put it together. Beyond even seeing patterns, just the stars in general are seen as that. So but I also think that that little thing right here is the future god, or deities. It's just starting to realize, like I said, if your clan's too big, you can't just have a family, personal ancestor. You have to have more like our hero. That's, Abraham Lincoln or whatever. That's our hero. That's someone from the past we all feel like, in the sense, we're connected to. Which I think later becomes even more removed and becomes deified. So progressed organized religion about 50,000 years ago. And this marks a tradition, of early prehistory with evidence of increasing burials. And then increasing burials with grave goods. An appearance of more anthropomorphic type of images. And cave arts, which once again, caves probably were seen as like a pseudo-womb going into the belly of the earth or whatever. But the earliest burial practice, especially ones in Europe and stuff, were more varied. So it's not like everything is uniform yet. Everyone's trying stuff. It's like they have a simple template of an idea, and they all kind of do their own thing, because, hey, who's going to tell you not to? And so 50,000 years ago, we have evidence of Neanderthals hunting, cave bears. And I think that this is important too, because a lot of, bear worship, is attached to these type of symbolic behaviors. People are going in intentionally. Taking down a bear would not have been an easy thing. It would take a clan. So the point is, you're starting to get group behaviors. So the oldest headband, or tiara, is about 50,000 years ago. Or it could have been used another way, but most likely it's used in this way. But it could have been an expression of family, clan, tribe. And to me, these are definitely leading all these kind of totemistic behaviors. And this was done by the Siberia. So 50,000 to 40,000 years ago, we're seeing the emergence of variations relating to what I think is totemistic culture influenced behavior of taboo beliefs, which to me relates to the genetic evidence of possible moral disgust, with genetics showing that after 40,000 years ago, there is an extreme lowering in incest behaviors. Also coinciding with the emergence of more complex art, figurines, and personal adornments around 50 to 40,000 years ago. All of this and more is more confirming evidence of my thought that Totemism's emergence is about 50,000. So Neanderthal has their own version of Totemism for about 10,000 years, which takes from the what they already had, because they are already 160 was the oldest use of these eagle talons, and they also seem to like black feathers probably. And I have the one on the corner because I think this stuff relates, like I said, to sky burials before, and also like the idea of spirit in general means like breath, and so that's why I have like she's going to blow into the beak of the bird as a way to like get its spirit. So this is the Neanderthal cave in Siberia, and there's some jewelry that's ostrich eggshells between 50 to 45,000 years ago. 22 artifact layers back from 125 into possibly 180,000 years ago. And then this stuff is attributed to the Neanderthals living in the cave. And then the Neanderthals are estimated at living there as another version of Neanderthal. It's from 120 to 100,000. And this is also when we met our ancient ancestors met the Neanderthals and mated. But the symbolic behavior is not limited. That cave has got all kinds of stuff going on. So you have things like the Soviets probably made. Around 90,000 years ago, there's a half also Neanderthal and half the Soviet child or person. And besides tools, they're also found decorative objects on bones, mammoth tusks, animal teeth, ostrich eggshell, drilled and polished holes of 40,000-year-old green bracelet. There's a tiara. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Also, the oldest sewing needle from a bird bone. Once again, kind of makes me think of the sky burials. So this is like when we finally show up, the modern humans, and some people will call these Cro-Magnon. I don't use that word because that basically just means early Europeans. But to me, they didn't just stay in that one area. This is more accurate to the organization culture of 46,000, could be even 47, to 35,000 years ago. And it's totemism for basically modern humans. And I think that it relates to the pre-agrarian stuff that the Neanderthals were already doing. So a lot of people talk about like the modified skulls from Peru and stuff, but actually the oldest modified skull, once again, dang it, those Neanderthals beat us again. So the skull reference a 45,000-year-old modified Neanderthal skull. This is the first evidence of possible modification, which could be ritualistic in nature. I think it is totemism. This is not made from modern humans, but rather it's our ancestor, the Neanderthals, or I would say our partial ancestor, because some people don't. It's not a direct, but most people not African have some amount of Neanderthal in them. And so while now it's not a full ancestor, still many modern humans carry the Neanderthal genes. The contribution from the Neanderthals to our genome is modest, and yet it may have proved to be vitally important for many modern humans. And so there was actually 2 skulls modified, not just one. It was it's important too, because if it was just one, could have been an accident, could have been, but the fact that there's more than one, it starts to be a little more evidence. So the other thing too is, once again, those dang Neanderthals, they built the first bone shelters. So the mammoth bone shelter dwellings are from 44,000 to 14,000 years ago. And then the map shows where they're at. The star is where the Neanderthal first one was. All those other ones are the modern human. And you see how close they are. It must have been a coincidence. So, and that's why I like to see things in context, because if I just said this, oh, well, it could have happened. Yeah, but it all happens almost in the same area. the whole time, and that's all of the ones that are made practically. There's a few other ones that are outside of that, but the majority is almost exclusively in the area that would have had almost direct connection to possibly that thing. So did they see it and then copied it, or did they get shown? So this right here shows you a quick reference of basically all the art to show you that there's definitely groupings. And you can see where totemism, I say, comes from. It has tons of it. Most of the art actually is all in that area. So, it's just to give you, and then this talks about the cultures. These are different cultures. This is at the Totemism. This is Shamanism. This is like a sort of a shamanist, totemist, almost paganist. I think paganist comes from this, in a sense. It leads to, I should say. And so this is some more art. These are, they believe, probably seals. I think the lines, just like the round dots, probably have to do with the stars, not just the art. They're doing symbolic behaviors. And this is from Spain. So the oldest pendant is 43,000 years ago from Russia. And it's made from a fossilized ancient squid that was not alive. It was just like to them probably just a weird looking rock. So this gives you a real quick thing of the organization art, and it's basically the totemistic art. And you can see that they definitely see here's the dots, the stars, and so. This right here is like probably, I think, probably like a placenta or something to do with birth. Then, now these are, people also call this a goddess figure. I also do not think that is. I think it's more evolved than just the older 300,000-year-old rocks, which are just probably stones. This probably is more like a clan ancestor, like a great-grandmother kind of a thing. Because to me, this is starting to use in the totemistic way, I believe, the ancestors' representation of power. Like, when I wear this, I'm protected by, my great-grandmother. So, and you already see that there's a female with horns, and to me this represents, just like all the animals that have horns, later, for sure, shamanism sees animals with horns or whatever as being related to stars. They call them star animals. That everything with a horn. And including like tusks from a boar, anything like that. I don't know about the elephant trunk itself, probably just the elephant tusks, which they made a lot of artifacts out of. But that one that there relates to the bull. The bull also relates to the moon, also relates to fertility. And as it gets younger, closer to 30,000 when there's shamanism beginning, then you start to see that they advance a little more. So this is for 43 to 41,000 year old in Turkey, and again, this is notched probably to string it on something. And it's a eagle talon. So this is Neanderthals making art. Once again, a bunch of dots, which I think relates to the stars. It's 40,800 from Spain. And it does seem that spirit animals and stuff like that relating to possibly later into deities is about 12,000. This right here shows you the culture, shows you the DNA that it relates to. So this helps you understand that the totemists and shamanists are actually the same, sort of thing, even though the culture is different. They're carrying some of the similar DNA, although there are different DNAs also. So they're different things, but they do share some common stuff. And then you see them changing as they go. But the whole point is that who the culture is, the DNA does seem to relate to how they express the religion a little bit different. So this is the bracelet, and they believe it was probably used in sacred ritual type of thing, and it's green. And this artifact is about 40,000 years ago, but they say the estimates it could even range up to 70,000 years ago. and it was broken, highly polished, dark green, and it's believed to have been made by the descendants of the Soviets. And it seems that they had drilled a hole, which seems like a feat. They have a 40,000-year-old cave art in Indonesia, and once again, they're not doing it totally, filled. Although this cave, it could be that some of the paint is flaked off. So either they did it intentionally, like the dots, or it could have actually looked better than 40,000 years ago. Now, some of this art, like especially the hands, they're using their mouth. They put it in their mouth dry, and then they spit it. And I think that relates to both the sky burials and the belief in spirits. The belief that our breath is like an entity, because if I hold my hand over your breath and it can't come back in, you die. Well, that's what they thought happened. We obviously know that's not really how breath works. But it's not a spirit that comes out. Just like I say, Gesundheit, when you sneeze, thinking that your spirit's coming out of your mouth, and thank goodness it came back. But anyways, this is just superstitious thing, but I think it attaches to when they're, in a sense, they're making magic. They're putting their spirit with the rock onto the thing and making some art. So you have totemism in Indonesia at 40,000 to 22,000 years ago. And the hand in the corner is 39,900 years old. And I think it relates to either totemism or animism. And it also may refer to, like I told you before, star spirits or ancestors. So we have more artifacts, around 40,000 to 35,000 is remains from Neanderthals. And then we have an early totemism, and it's 40,000 years ago. And first this was called the Lion Man, but then they weren't sure is that a cubic triangle? Or is that, a phallus? Now they don't say that. They just call it an anthropomorphic figure. But my point would still be that people need to understand that, like someone said to me, Damien, you said the first expression of a male god was 7,000 years ago. But there is, a half man, half lion thing that is much older. Well, this is what they're talking about. And it's not half anything. It's supposed to be in a sense, anthropomorphic. But is it a man? I don't think we can totally say that. So my response is yes, there is animals and women that are worshipped in a sense as deities around or before 12,000 years ago. And the other things that to me are clan totems, not gods. Female figures, though, go back about 300,000 years ago, but I think they're just ancestor worship. And at the emergence of agriculture, around 12,000 years ago, it was female fertility goddess and her animals. Generally 3 animals, but there's a couple more, but I'll just give you 3 and explain what it means. So her animals would be like the bird, relating to sky burials, or taking the spirits up. Snakes relating to birth, the umbilical cord, and death, rebirth. Snakes shed their skin and still could be alive. And then bulls relating to both the moon afterlife as well as stars, and some type of thoughts on ancestors. Also, it relates to fertility in the sense that they thought that the thunderstorms were like bulls, mad or running. And so, in a sense, the thunderstorms and the bringing of rain, which they thought probably was semen from the bull, would then fertilize the ground goddess in a sense. And so, it's the fertilization that later the male gods, I believe, begin about 7,000 years ago, and it's due to threats of violence and things that were turned into from like clan leader cult or a hunting cult and mixing into a warrior cult, which also probably had a clan leader, which later then probably became things like kings. So your male god is ridiculous. If there was a male god, what was he waiting for? Because evidence certainly is female, female, female. Where is your male if there is a male God? Now, I don't believe in any God. I'm just making a ridiculous joke that if there was one, it's certainly, if you just look at the archaeology, I don't know how you think it's a male. So, this is the engravings, and you see there's multiple things that have to do with the dot. And like I said, I think this relates to the stars, the ancestors. And this again is ritual, showing the lines on him. And then this is the back side of it. It has a bunch of little marks. And like other agrarian cultural items, such as the lion man or whatever that I showed you, the figurine from Germany, and which is from 43 to 28,000 years old. This statue, or thing, figurine, whatever, is about 32 to 38,000 years ago, with a whole bunch of notches. They think that the notches could have a special meaning, possibly days of pregnancy, number of days for Orion's stars. Don't know, but I would say definitely it probably relates to or links to human fertility in the spirit star sky. So, totemistic hunting cults at around 37,500 to 32,000-year-old bison skull, and done in a ritualistic way, probably trophy. And then we have some totemistic cave art, and that one thing in the corner is what this is representing. That little tiny piece and all the animals. If you look at it, to me, it's like the animals almost come from there. And the pubic triangle was made first, it's older, and then the bull and the lion were added as the legs. And I think it's very interesting that, in a sense, like the female representation, great mother or whatever, and then the animals are connected directly to it. So it's already showing to me that right before shamanism, because it's already like utilizing spirits, or what it looks like to me. This is 35,000 to 30,000 years ago. Whole bead cap was made and the person put in the grave, and then that's red ochre all on the head. Speaking of beads going crazy in early shamanism, they done buck wild and just went all out for the beads. Imagine making all those beads and just burying them in the ground. They had to do all those by hand. I think it's absolutely amazing the effort that religion will go to just to waste things. And then the fact that this burial being put head to head with these children, and then the items that they're buried with, like they're being passed off to the afterlife. And then these spears and hunting things to protect them, along with food. So this right here is the oldest, they believe, moon sort of chart, like what the moon's doing, phases, also relating probably to fertility. So they consider it, even NASA, it's considered to be the oldest lunar calendar, and it speaks of human awareness in a sense, or an observation and care about the stars, the heavens. And to me, it's also, like I already said before, has to do with the ancestors, as well as it could reference fertility cult, which dates to this Argarian culture of Europe, around 47,000 to 26,000 years ago. This early culture produced some of the earliest known cave art, pendants, bracelets, beads, and figurines. These totemistic astronomers made records of, it seems, lunar calendars, signs, and set marks into animal bone occasionally on cave walls. Some of the oldest lunar calendars and seeming understanding possibly of mathematical sets that relate to the moons or the moon cycle, eclipses, solar, solstice, seasonal changes of the earth. These beliefs seem to start in totemism, which begins, like I said, around 50,000 years ago in Europe, and is transferred then or adapted by shamanists starting about 30,000 years ago, and then paganists use this also, similar, because you see these are different items from different cultures. Around 12,000 years ago. I think all this, though, relates to moon phases and stuff, and stars. This right here is about 6,000 years old, and it relates to pictographs in Siberia that the shamans made to show star animals, like I was talking about before, how that their horns are seen as stars. And this right here is probably sun, but sun, stars, sun is a day star in a sense, and then even the moon probably was seen as something close to a star, like a night star along with the other stars. So this is a early religion 30,000 years ago, and it's the dancing figure, what they believe. And so it more than likely has to do with shamanism, because shamanism does rituals to make things happen, and so this is probably connected to that, and probably also rituals to lead to a spirit-filled life and afterlife. Here's the representation of the earliest shaman, from 31,000 to 20,000 in the Czech Republic. And this head is actually believed to be a representation of the shaman. Once again, though, interesting, one eye open, one eye closed. Or, another thing possible, that the woman had a disfigured or blind eye from some injury. Interesting enough that shamans often think that a person has to be blind or has to have gone through some sickness or almost death to be a shaman. It's like a way of passage into, because when you can't see in this life, they thought you could see in the other one. So this goes to show the lingering or emerging bear figures, and probably some sort of a bear worship cult. So shamanism, you start to see their heaven starts a little different than the other ones. They're starting to make the human a little less important, and even the animals less important. But they're starting to get more symbolic ideas of representations of things, like the Great Spirit. They don't really have a total fix on what that is exactly. It's like what you would try to say what a Christian would see as a god. But they're certainly on the path to get there. So this is, I think, is very interesting. These are a couple figurines, and they're about 30,000 and under. The one right here with the, I think it's 22 with the, I think it's possibly the earliest form of sexual slavery. Possibly. The fact that they're found bound. Now, or the bound could represent their controlling nature. But I think it's probably the other way around. This is sky burial. We're putting the burials up, and Native Americans do this too, putting them up in trees. So this could be also a sacred tree. When people understand that some of the ancient people thought our own bone structure is a sacred tree. In a sense, the tree of life. We are the tree of life. So then we have more symbolic behavior and ritualistically way of burying the dead. This is a triple burial. And they used to think that it was 2 men and a female. It's actually 3 guys. Interestingly, though, there's red ochre in his hand in the person's crotch. Now, there is some genetic evidence that that person in the middle may not have been a standard male, maybe a hermaphrodite or something like that. Now, once again, to a shamanism, things that are different are a good thing. Same with Hindu, like when a kid's born with like weird arms, legs, is a good thing. So the concept that we have today, we can't value judge how they thought. It's definitely different. So that may have been the shaman, the sacred person, and then people that either died or were executed to help them or protect them. So when did writing happen? Well, the appearance of 26 stone symbols, in a sense, appear in French sites first, starting about 25,000 years ago to 13,000 years ago. And again, it also finding these the same symbols a lot of parts of the world. So there probably was an initial, where I said totemism, and then a dispersal of, as they went, carrying these already pre-existing ideas. So a lot of people think of the boomerang, and they think, yeah, that's from Australia. Well, not really. It wasn't first from there. So the non-returning boomerang uses a weapon, or even probably a sacred stick, was probably invented at least 25,000 possibly as much as 50,000 years ago. The oldest boomerang discovered in Poland is 20,000 years ago. Now, so when was the oldest boomerang found in Australia? 12,000 years ago. But it was a returning boomerang, or what they call a real boomerang. So then you have this culture right here. This culture is the one that basically makes, in a sense, or genetically connects to all Native Americans. So this is where all that comes from. And it already starts with the shameless behavior. I see the snakes, and then the little figurines tying into the clothes, or maybe wearing on the neck. And they're already doing extreme designs on platelets. And some of these platelets might have been like attached, like a brooch, like it is in that picture. So this gives you an idea when I think that some of the stuff that was basically totemism and shamanism ends up in Australia, came from the Asians bringing it. So I think basically totemism starts in Europe. Europeans give it to the Asians by way of Siberia, and then those people genetically do end up in Malaysia and Indonesia and East Timor, and then little boats show art going over, probably what that represents, over into Australia. After that point, there's really no more real deep connection with Australia and the rest of the people. But it definitely shows. So it's interesting, though, that the art, the oldest art in a sense that's not this dynamic, is about 40,000 years ago in Australia. But this kind of art is like about 20 to 30,000 years ago. Although most of the Bradshaw art could be sometimes even younger. So this right here shows a woman and holding a bullhorn, once again to be connects to the moon and fertility. And then the horn has lines. So it's 25,000 years ago. And I think this does relate to the later goddess, although this is not a goddess. And relates to the bull cults that are later at AtHope, which is the oldest, or Chagahoya, I should say. Yeah, the oldest, in a sense, religious city in the world. So this is a reconstruction scene of shamans in France, showing you their religious behavior. So a lot of people think of people are cave people. No, they lived in houses. They went to caves to worship. So this is slash paintings from Australia dating to 19,000 years ago, showing this kind of a shamanistic representation in dance. This right here, I think, could represent a totemistic reincarnation scene, or shamanistic. It's from France, and because it looks like there's a bird head, and his phallic is a horn. So it's showing these things are connected. And then it's going down, and it's entering here first that becomes the person. It's like reincarnation. I think this right here possibly could be like it's birthing it. Birthing it goes to the historic, goes to the human, and then back. But certainly this is showing some advancing the religious ideas. This to me leads to the later goddesses. The sitting figure right here, I don't think this is a goddess, but I think this is what they come from in a sense. So it's about 15,000 years ago in France. Although this style of figurine generally is about 17,000 to 12,000 years ago. 12,000 being when I say paganism begins. Like I said, this does have, to me, something to do with that. This right here shows you the phase of the moon. Also, to me, the becoming goddesses that relate to the phase of the moon. So the arms up and stuff would be the one bull, and then the fat one is like the full moon, and then the skinny other one there is like a death. So like birth, life and death. So this shows you right here, even through time, from 14,000 all the way to 1692, there's a common theme in shamanism. Showing that even though they're not all completely the same, their symbolic ideas are definitely have a connected source. This right here is also not a god. This is a clan leader totem. And I do think this is the beginning of the clan leader cult, which then becomes later the kings. So this right here is 13,500 years ago. And it also has eyes put in. I think the chevrons have to do with power, and holding his genitals is also a form of saying power. So this right here, location of the first tower structures, and they were, in a sense, towers, like I think 3 or 4 of them. Why? One would have done, and why do you even need one? To make both of them, like multiple of them, in a very close area with absolutely no reason. It's not like it was military. War doesn't start till 10,000. This is from 13,000 to 11,650. There's no real war. So to have these multiple things, it just doesn't make sense. Probably had a religious thing. Once again, I think probably still relates because it's still kind of shamanism before the 12,000. I think it's basically sky barrels. They're building large towers and they're putting probably people on them so they can be taken. So this shows paganism. In early paganism had a lot to do with alcohol. They're making some brew. You gotta get drunk, man. I mean, that's how else do you get to God? Get a good hangover. So the person becomes a little bit more important than they before. There's more focus on the individual, but also there's a whole bunch of these new spirits and like beings and stuff that supernatural belief beings. So 12,000 years ago, a tomb in northern Israel contained a skeleton of a 15-year-old woman next to a puppy. They were buried together in a symbolic way. Then, also 12,000 years ago, in Israel, this is also considered to be a shamanist burial. And the tortoise shells do relate to shaman. They think that the tortoise, in a sense, go to the underworld and yet come back alive. Which if humans go in the water and for a while, they don't come back. And then the feather is the sky burial. You start to see it. In fact, they even take the shells, they'll put like rocks or stuff and make rattles out of them because they think that the spirits then hear them. And they're using a thing that it can go through more than one world. That's like the same to Christians. When they think that you're baptized, you go down, you come back, reborn, wow, there you are! You disappeared, you died. So that's the underworld, in a sense. So a lot of people think of swastikas now as something that has to do with the Nazis. No. This is a very old thing. And this has to do at least starting 12,000 years ago. So it definitely even more so by 8,000 years ago. So this is from about 13,000 to 9,370. And I think these things in the middle probably had like sticks across them so they can become sky barrels. And sky barrels on these things are made like ancestors, so I think it's relating to the same stuff. So because to me, this is right when shamanism becomes paganism. So it's still very shamanist paganism. Later it loses some of that, but it's very heavy shamanism right now at the beginning. And this right here is once again the bull and the stars. A 12,000-year-old glyph, and it probably relates that same kind of ideas as that other 25,000-year-old holding the bullhorn. This right here relates to the ancestor cult to me, the clan leader cult, and to me it's at the first human-made temple, and we can see that they're making more emphasis. And if you notice the nose and face, it's a similar theme that happens. This is another thing too. They started decorating or cutting their genitals. Probably still relates to the hunting and clan leader cult kind of stuff, because they could do something that, in a sense, women didn't have. And they also to sacrifice. Even in the Mayans, they would cut their genitals. It says that blood is the most sacred blood. So I'm not exactly sure that they thought that, but it's similar ideas. It's not like it originated out of nowhere. So this is showing the same goddesses that they come because of our culture. And that right there is 11,500 to 11,000. It's one of the oldest gods. And interesting too is, that's in the sense that the first one in that kind of a position. A lot of the ones before are just standing. You even have it sitting, but having it like either it's given birth or you know, it's available to have sex or there's something a little bit different. I think this is also when you get the split of women, where you have two kind of versions. You have, like, in a sense, the pure good and then the sexual, you know, powerful. Because it wasn't like it was directly bad, it was like warrior. So, you know, in a sense, war and then love. So this right here shows you the sitting deities, because the sitting deities have a great effect on relating to, like I showed you, the sitting behavior has to do with giving birth. And these are all, in a sense, birth goddesses. And you can see, once again, they're kind of centralized in where they're at. And they have a similar thing through time, that they're not, you know, the similar theme with this position. So, and I think it relates to Semitism. The fact that people started staying in one place and started making, so they were making crops, staying in place. Once you do that, then you really need that crop to work. You have this new thing of fear that you never had before, because if there wasn't, you just left. Now you don't leave. Now if that dies, you're going to have to die. So it changes everything. Everything happens in agriculture and Semitism. You actually get more kids, because people that are on the move, hunter-gatherers, have a lot fewer children because it's this movement. And all, probably the hard extremes in the body probably affects the female reproduction also. And then the changing of food. When you eat different foods, it does affect, and how you eat the foods can affect stuff. So I think it's very interesting. So this, again, is a clan leader totem pole. And if you look, there's multiple faces on the figure. And I think that those relates, once again, it's not just one thing. It's like this relates to all of us. It's our ancestor or clan totem. And this is from Russia, and it's 11,000 years old. And the face is not that different than those other faces. At 12,000, they were found in Turkey. Or these faces, they were found in Turkey that are 10,400 years ago, that probably also relate to that clan leader cult. And this right here is probably a mother goddess kind of a thing, 10,000 years ago. And you can see there's a hole in the arms, like she's in a place to where she can give birth. So this right here helps to show how, in a sense, paganism left, and the people left Turkey, and how they moved into Europe. It wasn't one wave of expansion, it's basically two different ones, a land route and a sea route.